Welcome to this extremely exciting solution-based session, which I think is great. I'm all for solutions. Enhancing biological pest control, the food spray approach, which is really enticing and exciting, I think. So I should introduce myself and then the speakers, and then they will be speaking for 20 minutes each with slides. It's a technical, detailed presentation, but there'll be loads of opportunities for questions and comments afterwards. So I'm Vicki Hurd. I'm the strategic lead on agriculture at the Wildlife Trusts, but I've also been a long-standing supporter of Pesticide Action Network, which I love, and please join it, and a trustee. And you know, they do amazing work building alternatives and lobbying for the right kind of conditions, so farmers don't have to rely on the chemicals that have dogged our industry for so many years, and which cost a lot, cost increasing amounts. So finding those alternatives, absolutely key. So I'm really excited about this session. Very pleased to be able to introduce it and chair and facilitate it. So we're very lucky to be joined by Dr. Stephanie Williams, who I've known for a long time. Is an ecologist, biologist, a scientist for XR, Extinction Rebellion, amazing, and recently retired, although I suspect you're not doing anything, staff scientist at Pan UK, after more than 2 decades working on pesticide alternatives and sustainable agriculture across Africa, Latin America, Asia and Europe. Huge knowledge and experience. At Pan, her work included identification and promotion of ecologically informed alternatives to the hazardous pesticides, pesticide policy assessment, and advising food and fibre companies on standards and reducing pesticide use and risks. So she'll speak first, and then Atalo will be speaking second. He's an entomologist, like myself, so I have great affinity to entomologists. I'm a bug lover, but he's project coordinator at Pesticides Action Nexus Association Ethiopia. So very welcome coming from Ethiopia, Pan Ethiopia. And his work has expanded sustainable agricultural production, including organic farming in Ethiopia, which is immense, and particularly on cotton. I'm sure you're aware of the organic cotton you can now buy. Introduced agroecological solutions for smallholder farmers that help to reduce or eliminate the use of harmful pesticides, what we all need, from the production of cotton and vegetables. And so this is a really exciting thing to hear about, this food spray, which they will talk about having developed in Ethiopia and how it's been applied elsewhere. So with no further ado, Stephanie, can you give us your presentation, please? And we are being recorded, just so you know.
Can everyone hear me okay? Yep, thank you. Thanks very much, Vicki, and to ORF for enabling us to share with the audience here, and I understand there are quite a lot of people online as well, so welcome. We'd like to share with you what's been about almost 20 years now of incredibly positive experiences with this method of natural pest control, and I think probably something like almost 20,000 small-scale farmers in West and East Africa that we've reached out. So it's a bit of an unsung story. We don't blow our trumpet very much in Pan UK, so we're really happy to share that experience with you today. So this is just a brief rundown of what we're going to cover today. I'll give a very quick intro to who we are, and then some background context on pesticide problems, which are very much the rationale for why we've devoted so much time and effort to practical, safer alternatives. I will talk a bit about the origins of the food spray method and practical aspects of how it's been adapted for use in Africa. Then I'll pass over to Atalo to really share his really thoughtful insights from his experiences in Ethiopia. So Pesticide Action Network International, we're a network of over 600 groups all over the world. Our main goal is to phase out hazardous pesticides for ecologically sound alternatives, also with a very strong social justice focus. In Pan UK, for many years we've had strong partnerships with Ethiopia and Benin. So we're working with them, and they work with local farmers there to try and test out and adapt new methods. We also draw on our wide networks of expertise. We work with many other organizations, other NGOs, government agencies, supply chain actors, encouraging them and supporting them to move away from reliance on pesticides. And we're also involved, and people may know us more for our sort of international advocacy for safer and sustainable agriculture and for healthy and more prosperous farming livelihoods. So we still have a problem with pesticide use. Whilst a handful of some of the worst pesticides have been banned in recent years, overall use is still going up. I think if you work in the organic sector, maybe you're not aware of that, but the graphic here shows the tons of pesticide active ingredient used in 2020 for different regions of the world, and the percentage change since 1999. And with the exception of Europe, where we've had a small reduction, yay, but overall the global pesticide market has almost doubled in the last 20 years. Reaching now almost 4 million tons of active ingredient that goes into the environment and causes health and environmental harm every year. Many of these are what we term highly hazardous pesticides. And pesticides can and do harm human health. Recent review of global data estimated 44% of farmers and farm workers suffer some form of acute poisoning incident each year. So overall, that's many millions of people affected worldwide. That's on the scale of some rates of infectious disease incidents. So it's a big problem, but it's still quite a hidden problem. Some of those incidents may be temporary or relatively mild, but many are much more severe, even fatal. That's the acute poisoning side. Long-term health problems, they're much more difficult to assess. We know that some pesticides can cause cancer, some can affect the reproductive system, harm the unborn child, or result in life-changing damage to, for example, the nervous system. And this pesticide poisoning also imposes economic costs. The UN Environment Programme estimated some years ago that the costs for poisoning for small-scale farmers in Africa over a 15-year period could amount to almost 100 billion US dollars. I mean, that's massive. And health impacts are not evenly distributed. This is where the social justice issue comes out. You can see in this graphic that the numbers of poisoning cases per region are mainly in the countries of the global south, where controls on pesticides continue to be pretty weak. Some of the most hazardous products are used and under very risky practices. Pesticides also harm wildlife. They get into our environment. We know that biodiversity loss is a big issue now. It has many causes, but there are numerous scientific studies that highlight the major role that pesticides can play in systems on land and in water. Particularly concerning is harm to the providers of ecosystem services on which our food and farming systems rely. Most people are generally aware that pesticides can harm bees, but often people, and this is often the case for farmers, that they're not aware of their level of harm to predatory insects and other organisms that can keep pests and diseases in our crops generally under control. Pesticides also harm soil invertebrates and the microbes that help break down organic matter and turn it back into nutrients for plants. In aquatic ecosystems, they can wreak havoc not only on fish but all the different organisms that make up those food chains. If you want to find out more about the links between pesticide and biodiversity loss and why we're campaigning hard for better pesticide reductions in global biodiversity framework, there's the link there for you. And pesticides also contribute to the climate crisis. The vast majority are derived from fossil fuels. They use really energy-intensive processes, which release a lot of greenhouse gases. And the impacts of pesticides on soil life mean that those soils affected are much less able to act as carbon sinks, which means we end up with more carbon dioxide left in the air. So not good news for climate crisis. Our current levels of pesticide use globally impose serious economic burdens, particularly in countries in the global south. Since 2020, most countries have seen huge price rises in pesticides to do with the price hike in fossil fuels. Many countries are struggling with dangerous illegal trade in counterfeit pesticides. And indirect cost of reliance on pesticides, those can be very high for national budgets. Governments have to spend money on regulations, where those exist, cost of disposal, where that exists. Agricultural sectors will suffer financial losses if the crops they're exporting have pesticide residues above the maximum legal limits. And that's not to mention all the often unquantified costs to harm to human health and in the environment. So that's a sort of big picture, but we shouldn't forget that this actually causes economic problems at farm level. The harm that pesticides inflict on beneficial insects can be substantial. It can upset that balance between pests and predators that generally keep pests under control. And when you get a lot of natural enemies being harmed by pesticides, some of your pests can surge back. Whitefly in cotton is a really good example of that. And farmers don't always realize what the cause of that is. They don't realize it's actually because that really valuable kind of invisible natural control contribution from creatures like the ladybird here has been taken out by the insecticides. Just to give an example of impacts on farming households, this data is from the baseline survey at the start of Pan Ethiopia's vegetable project. Atalo's going to talk about that a bit later. And Atalo's team documented from smallholders there that they were spraying on their small plots, and their vegetable plots around 0.5 to 1 hectare, something like that, 10 to 30 times per season, sometimes even more, often really hazardous pesticides there. So that's a huge impact. Farmers, unsurprisingly, reported that their livestock was often getting poisoned, beehives were affected, honey production and income was down, and that's a big livelihood for farmers and people living in rural communities in many parts of Ethiopia. In terms of human health, when we did that survey, so before we had our project interventions and training, 20% of those small-scale farmers reported that they or a family member had suffered at least one poisoning incident in the previous 12 months. When we asked that question of farm workers, that incidence rate went up to 73%, so a huge problem. This means losing money for those farms. They have to, they lose money when they take time off sick, if they go and get some kind of medicine or other kind of treatments. So tackling that scenario of problems is what led Pan UK and our African farmers to get involved with the food spray method, which I will now go on to. The method was developed by our long-term collaborator, Dr. Robert Mensah. You can see him here, when he was working at the Australian Cotton Research Institute. He started this in the early 1990s. He's an entomologist. At that time, there were a lot of toxic insecticides being used on Australian cotton, so he was really keen to try and find some alternatives. He had been studying beneficial insects that could be found around cotton fields, and which prey on things like bollworm caterpillars, also sucking pests like aphids. He documented a range of useful predatory groups, but they weren't really there in enough numbers to get a good level of natural pest control. He'd been using strips of alfalfa legume sown at the edge of cotton fields to try and serve as a habitat to boost the numbers of these natural enemies, which worked there, but they weren't really getting into the cotton crop where he wanted them to go and do their biocontrol action. So he was trying to find a way to get more of the good bugs into actually the rows of cotton foliage. So Robert knows that predatory insects locate their prey as much by smell as they do by sight. They are searching for the chemical signals that plant-feeding insects release when they're chewing leaves or sucking sap. So Robert started experimenting with different materials to see if he could try and mimic that chemical signal. He came up, after a couple of years of research, with a mix of protein-rich ingredients, think something a bit like Marmite, yeasty sort of fermented stuff. He then tried that out, spraying dilutions of those mixtures on the cotton fields, and he found it worked really well. It lured in predators like ladybirds, lacewings, hoverflies, which are all very effective on cotton pests, and also things like this nice predatory rove beetle you can see in the photo. From his research, he could show that the odour from the food spray, when you sprayed it on the foliage, could attract in these natural enemies from up to 500 metres away, which was great. And then they would start foraging in the crop for prey, performing a pretty effective biological control of the pest that he was interested in controlling. And he then developed the food spray into a commercial product. So we started getting involved with this back in 2006. We'd known Robert for some time, and we brought Robert over to Benin with our partner Obipab there, who were already working in organic cotton. And we wanted to see if he could come up with a recipe for food spray that would work in the context there, using affordable and locally available resources. We also wanted him to formally test the method, see if it would be technically feasible, but also would it be acceptable to the organic cotton farmers? Could it fit in with their ways of their practices? And then do some cost-benefit comparisons in production cost and yield terms, both with their existing organic methods, but also with conventional cotton using insecticides. And he came up pretty quickly. He found that waste brewer's yeast is really effective and works really well as a food spray. However, it wasn't that readily accessible for many of the farmers there. So then he started experimenting with partly fermented maize. All the farmers there either grow maize or can buy it very easily. And he came up with a recipe that's fairly simple to prepare. He also developed a very simple monitoring system for farmers there so that they can check what their current balance between pests and predators is in the field, so they can decide, do I need to apply a food spray or not? Do I need to apply another one? Our partner then trained up the first cohort of some of their long-established organic farmers in using the method in their own fields, and it proved really successful with yield increases up to 40% higher than what they'd been getting before using their existing organic practices. And this was very much down to the boost in natural enemies in the crop in sufficient numbers and at the right time, so that they would then start going hunting down and consuming pest prey before it reached damaging levels. So he came up with a really good method which has been adopted by the majority of the organic farmers in Benin. I should stress at this point that applying the food spray itself is only just part of the method. Just as important is to ensure that you've got suitable habitat within and around your field to serve as a refuge for natural enemies. Because if you don't, they just won't stay in your field. Here you can see, this is Pan Ethiopia. The dark green is a plot of onion, and the lighter green is a border of alfalfa growing around it as a nice refuge. then you're going to be applying food sprays. And if you're not in an organic system, there's really little point going to all the effort of attracting predators in if you then kill them off with a conventional insecticide spray. So we need to be very careful in avoiding insecticide use wherever possible if you're not in an organic system, and only choosing those products which are much less toxic and preferably only what we call non-chemical treatments. I can't underemphasize the importance of these habitat borders. They really need some dense foliage, especially in tropical conditions. They won't like the heat of the sun, so you really need to have a comfortable home for them to retreat to in the hottest time of the day. And also you really want to encourage them to have somewhere where they can find mates and reproduce and actually get an increasing level of natural enemy populations. And we can provide this with borders or strips of taller crops sown in advance of the main crop. In cotton, we found that maize or sorghum works really well. In vegetables, we've used alfalfa or mustard. And ideally, you want those habitat borders to get quite a bit of nice bushy growth by the time the pests may start appearing in your main crop. So we've got tomato crop on the left-hand side here, which is the main crop, and a nice bushy alfalfa border to the right. You can find full details of actually how you prepare and apply food spray in our training manual online. So I'm just going to give a very quick summary here. For the maize-based recipe, basically you're putting maize kernels into boiling water, soaking them for 24 hours, then you take them out, grind them up, put them into cold water, steep them for another 48 hours, then you sieve out all that solid material, lay it out in the sun in a really thin layer, and it dries out to form a coarse powder which we call the food spray product. When you want to apply it to your crop, you're going to make a solution of that in the amount of water that you'd put in your sprayer, carefully filtering out all the solid material. So the solid material itself does not go on the crop. We add a little bit of soap, household soap, which helps that solution stick better to the foliage. And also we found it works to add a tiny bit of sugar. That gives a little kind of energy snack to any predators that are in the crop. That's especially important when you've got your plants, your crop plants are quite small. There's often not a huge amount of pest prey in there at the beginning of the season. So giving that little bit of sugar boost helps keep those natural enemies that you've attracted in, keep them working in the field for you. You want to get good coverage of your spray solution on the foliage, so walking quite slowly, spraying side to side. In terms of the timing, you want to make sure you've got your first food spray before pests start appearing. So basically you want to have them ready and waiting for when the first pests arrive. So in cotton we found that works when the plants have 4 to 6 true leaves. And in vegetables it's about a week after transplanting. You will generally need to apply several food sprays over the season. It's not just going to be one. So to know when you do this, you need to monitor your crop regularly to see when that balance between pests and predators is tipping out of favour. We use a rule of thumb of 1 predator to every 2 pests. That's our decision threshold. So if you, in your sample of 1 metre, that you're going to count on, if you count at least 1 predatory insect for every 2 pests, then you've got a favourable balance, and that level of predators should keep those pests in check at least for the next few days. This rule of thumb came out of Robert's work in Australia, in cotton there, and we found it was equally relevant for cotton in Ethiopia and Benin. So it's really important to keep a close eye on the crop. Ideally, you'd be monitoring every 3 to 4 days, but a week is also okay. There are many different factors that can alter that balance between pests and predators. And in some cases, you may find that even when you've applied several food sprays, then pests start increasing. In that case, you're going to need to consider some kind of direct control treatment. And we always, if possible, go for something like a botanical extract, like neem seed extract, which is relatively harmless, or certainly softer to your natural enemies than conventional insecticides. And I should note also that, the food spray method is not a magic bullet. It is not going to solve all your pest problems. It really works best as part of an integrated and agroecological approach, where we need to, make sure that the field is less conducive to pest and disease problems in the first place. Growing a healthier crop is really important, that's more resilient. Good, careful field hygiene, sanitary pruning in tomato, for example, is really effective. Supporting farmers to make good observations so they can make better decisions on when and where action needs to be taken. And always choosing, wherever possible, the least toxic direct control options. So I hope you agree that this food spray method, it fits well with agroecological principles, particularly those based on maximising beneficial ecological interactions, boosting biodiversity in and around fields, and paying attention to healthy soil. What I like about the method is that it fits both into organic and non-organic systems, and maybe some of you would be intrigued to see if it could work in your cropping systems. So before I hand on to Atalo, I would like to say a huge thank you first to Robert Mensah for his collaboration and inspiration over the years, and also to one of our longest standing and most supportive donors, that's the UK-based charity Trade. Trade have funded the adaptation work in Benin and then helped in Ethiopia. They've supported our partners there to work long-term with farmers. It's not an overnight solution, and so it's been really important to get that support from Trade. They've been with us at every step on that journey, so I'd very much like to acknowledge their support. I'll pass over to Atalo now. Thank you.
There's a couple of seats at the front if you want to come and sit here. Yes. Okay. Oh, it's a big shift. Great. I think we'll kick off with Atalo now.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So good afternoon. I'm Atalo from Ethiopia. I came from all the way here to tell you experiences in adopting the food spray method to smallholder farmer, cotton and vegetable grower farmers in Ethiopia. So to tell you a little bit about Pan Ethiopia, we work mainly on preventing negative impacts of pesticides and other hazardous chemicals in Ethiopia with government, farmers, agriculture office people and the others. We also collaborate with Pan Ethiopia, especially on pesticide hazard reduction. It's also involved in global policy, especially in bringing up local experiences, smallholder experience to the global arena in preventing export of toxic pesticides to Ethiopia, prevention of smallholder farmers from using those toxic pesticides for cotton and other vegetable production. The project, the food spray project was started back in 2013. The main reason the project started there was cotton is mainly grown by smallholder farmers as a cash crop, and it is one of the crops which takes huge amount of pesticides for production. And the next one is vegetables, which I will be telling you later. So cotton production, smallholder farmers and both commercial farmers, they use aircrafts for spraying. They use knapsack sprays. So when the project started in 2013, The intention was to tackle the use of highly toxic pesticides by smallholder farmers and introduce alternative pest management options so that they can reduce the impacts, the adverse impacts both on human health, biodiversity, soil, water bodies, and so on. So in 2013, the project started with trials. We set up trials because we didn't know that the food spray worked in Benin and in Australia, but we didn't know whether it will work in Ethiopia or not, because we didn't want to jump into extension, but we wanted to test it whether it works for smallholder farmers or not. So we started a trial in 2013, and the trial continued up to 2014, and two years trial was conducted on maize-based food spray, yeast, and neem also used as a kind of top-up spray, because when the pest population builds up, farmers have to use something that can bring the population down so that they can ensure that their cotton is protected from pests. So trials were conducted on those three recipes, and data was collected on pest and natural enemy numbers per meter, yield, production cost, because we wanted to see whether the food spray, the sprayed field really attracted natural elements into the cotton field, and the predator insects, mainly the natural elements, are making sure that pest population is within natural balance. If it is beyond the natural balance and pest population is increasing, then farmers usually use neem as a kind of top-up so that they can bring down the pest population. So those, the one you see on top is the neem seed powder that farmers use, prepare at home. The photo, the lower part of the picture is maize-based food spray, because farmers prepare the food spray at home. Most farmers grow maize, so access to the maize-based food spray is not a problem for smallholder farmers. So the trial results, after conducting the 2 years trials, we were able to get high number of especially predator insects, mainly ladybird beetles, lacewings, hoverflies. There are a list of natural elements that we were able to attract into sprayed cotton fields by into the food spray treated cotton fields. So if you can see the graph A, you can see higher number of ladybird beetles as compared to the other treatments. We have a list of treatments: maize-based, yeast-based, and then untreated, and you have the neem-treated plots as well. So you can see more natural elements, mainly ladybird beetles, on the food spray treated plots. On graph B, you can also see more lacewings, both in the food spray treated plot. So we are able to show farmers that the food spray treated cotton field, more natural elements were coming into sprayed cotton fields, and farmers, were able to manage cotton pest and be able to maintain the natural balance. So you can see here the effect of the treatments, the food spray treatments on pests. So the main, we have a list of major pests for cotton. One of them is bollworms. You have a list of sucking pests. So if you see bollworms, you have higher number of bollworms in graph A, higher number of bollworms in the untreated control plot compared to the other food spray treated plots. That means the natural enemies attracted and conserved into the sprayed cotton field were able to at least maintain the natural balance or bring down the bollworm population to the level that they don't cause damage to the crops. In graph P, jassies or leafhoppers, they are also one of the main cotton pests. You can see more jassies on the untreated plots compared to the other. The food spray treated and neem treated plots were more or less managing the cotton pest to the level that were not harmful to the cotton plots. This is a bollworm. Sorry. So the results mainly in yield, we were able to the cotton yield was 12 to 25% higher compared to the conventionally managed crops. So these yields are from smallholder farmers. And net income was 30% higher compared to the conventionally grown. So it was both an integrated crop management, use of food spray and neem, and then the yields were better compared to the conventionally managed crops. The photos you see here are smallholder farmers who were growing cotton using the food spray method, and this is after harvesting and then taking their cotton to the ginning mill. So it was after 2013, 2014, the trials we did, we went into extension because we wanted to reach more farmers. We knew that the food spray method works. We were able to attract more natural elements into sprayed cotton fields. And as a top-up, we're using neem. So we started training farmers through kind of training approach called farmer field schools. So training covers the full cycle of the crop. It starts from land preparation, because we have to make sure that, as we are also using the integrated pest management approach, we have to start from land preparation up to harvesting and post-harvesting. So we started the training in 2015. The training was started in 3 villages, 30 farmers in each of the villages. So training is practical and it happens on the field. As you see, starting from land preparation, they have to sow in rows. They have to go out while the cotton is ready, especially after the cotton is 4 to 6 leaves. They have to do scouting, counting natural elements and pests, and then they will be able to use that real-time data for making a decision whether to apply food spray or not. Because that data collected, the data they collected will be used for making decisions. If the pest population is high and the natural elements are really low, they could go either neem as a top-up, but if the balance is okay, it is not really to the level that they can that it can harm their crops, they can go for the food spray. So that real-time data is used for decision making by a smallholder farmer. But they learn in groups. The farmer field school is usually has a group of 30 farmers, and those 30 farmers will split up in 6 groups. With those 6 groups will have 5 farmers each, and then they will collect that data, agronomic, plant protection data. Then the data collector they will gather together and make a decision, because it's also kind of rotational learning. If we go to my farm today and we make decisions based on the data we collected from my plot, and then the next week some other farmer will get the turn. So that's a kind of rotational data where the farmers also will get a chance to look at each of their farms. So this way, the farmer field school was used as a kind of approach to reach more farmers. Yeah, the most important part of farmer field schools is because farmers need to develop their skills, because the decision is made based on the number of pests and natural elements data they collected. So the farmers, they need to have skills of identifying pests, which insects are pests, which insects are natural elements. So they need to have that skill of identifying the pests, identifying major pests, major natural elements, and they need to know at least the life cycles of major pests and natural elements, because the life cycle is where the management practices will be implemented. So the training approach was very important. It helped us provide trainings on skills of identification, both pests and natural elements, and they also learn about how pesticides are really harmful to their communities, their livestock, their beehives, because they do beekeeping as well. So there are farmers who lost lots of beehives, bee colonies, because of the aircraft application of pesticides. So that gave an opportunity for farmers to learn more about natural enemies, pests, how harmful pesticides are when, especially the highly hazardous pesticides that are really applied for cotton pest management. The most important part of the FFS or the farmer field school is farmers, they do count pests and natural enemies, and the decision is based on ratios. So ratios, for farmers to calculate ratios, it was really difficult, challenging. So the approach was they bring maize kernels and stones. So the maize kernels represent the good insects. The good insects, as we call them, farmers' friends, are the natural enemies. And the bad insects, or the pests, are represented by stones. So at each count they did, they put maize and stones on their different hands, and after counting samples at 5, 6, or 3 places, they will compare the number of stones and the number of maize they got. If the number of maize are higher than the number of stones, then they are safe because they have got more natural enemies than pests. If the number of stones are more or higher than the number of maize they have got, then they need to do something. Either they will apply food spray or they can go for neem. So this was the kind of approach that farmers use during the farmer field school training to make decisions easier rather than telling them to do ratios of pests and natural enemies. So from 2015 up to 2023, in 2015 the project started extension training farmers in 3 villages. In 2023 we reached 22 villages, and out of in those 22 villages there were 18,000 households, and out of which we reached more than 8,000 households training the farmers, 8,000 cotton grower households. So that was through FFS weekly, and the FFS session has to be done on weekly basis and rotational, engaging farmers in practical sessions, so that they can develop their skills in crop management systems. So this is yield data from from plots managed by smallholder farmers and farmer practices and integrated management or IPM plots. You can see yield differences, percent yield difference. The ones on the left are a list of villages. We have different villages: Elgo, Shelle, Kolla, Shelle, and Takanchama. So these are different villages where the projects were implemented, and yields from the IPM plots and the farmer practice plot. So we were able to get even to the level of more than 50% yield differences in between the farmer managed plots and then the IPM plots. This was part of the pest management, differences in pest management, in general crop management systems, including agronomic practices. So in summary, for the cotton, the food spray adoption in cotton production, as I said earlier, the project was started in 2013, and 2014 we were able to get the result that the food spray can work for cotton production, for cotton pest management, and then farmers motivated to change their practices. The farmers, they were getting exposed to pesticides of aerial application, knapsack sprays, and one of the challenges, especially with smallholder farmers in pesticide use, is apart from pesticide exposure that they get when doing pesticide application, pesticide is used as a means of committing suicide by their children whenever they store it in their houses. So they really wanted options rather than keeping, putting or storing pesticides in their house. So farmers, they were really motivated to adopt optional pest management practice rather than relying on pesticides. So the project farmers, they stopped pesticide use and then switched to adopting food spray. So in 2017, we were able to certify organic farmers. We started certifying because it was started in 2015. I mean extension and then supporting farmers to adopt it. In 2017, we were able to certify organic. Farmers were able to get organic certification in 2017. That was the first organic certified cotton in Ethiopia as well. Because previously, even the government and pro-pesticide farmers, they were saying that you cannot grow cotton or any other crop without using external inputs, especially pesticides, because pests are really damaging the crop, and without using inputs, external inputs, pesticides, you cannot grow. But we were able to show the result, and farmers were also able to get certified organic in 2017. That was the first one, and then it paved the way even for government offices to come and learn more about organic production. So that was really groundbreaking certification even that we were able to achieve. And so, as I said earlier, more than 8,000 farmers were trained through extension from 2015. The other thing is regional government and cotton sector convinced. So, cotton is one of the commodities the industry inputs in Ethiopia, which also which the government is also trying to export to other textile companies. But exporting cotton has become a challenge because of extensive use of pesticides, certification, the need for sustainable cotton supply. So the government wanted to push and get engaged into organic cotton production. So regional government office and the cotton sector wanted to extend organic cotton and other sustainable cotton standards to be engaged and produce cotton for the textile company. So the corridor where we are implementing the organic cotton or the food spray method is now dedicated as organic cotton production corridor by the government. So the government is pushing, even they assign a kind of department in their ministry where the organic cotton can be promoted more. Yeah, so the next question was, I remember we had a meeting, a kind of workshop with where the Ministry of Agriculture and people from different offices were engaged, and we said we were able to stop pesticide use for cotton production. But people were saying cotton is a kind of non-food, non-feed crop. Can you try it on vegetables? And next to cotton, one of the crops which consume huge amount of pesticides in Ethiopia is vegetables. So can you try it on vegetables? Will it work? And we have a huge number of people looking for either organic or ecologically produced vegetables in Addis and in the big cities. But farmers and even the government were really not sure whether we were able to show the food spray will work for vegetables or not. So there are also that's one of the questions. And in 2018, we got a project to trial the food spray method for vegetables in one of the huge in one of the areas where there is huge pesticide load, where farmers are completely reliant on pesticide use. So we started trialing the food spray method for vegetables. So the trials were on food spray, and the food spray method is all the same. So we use the food spray, neem extract, and then we added conventionally managed vegetable plots in the area where we were trialing the food spray. So we used the same approach, but we had to kind of change some of the production systems depending on the type of crop that we're managing. So data on pest and natural enemies, spray frequency, yield, and everything were collected because we have to show to the government people especially that we're not really sure whether the food spray method will work or not. So we collected all that data. And the data shows this is pests per meter, and if you see, the green one is the food spray treated plot, and the black is the neem treated, and the red line represents the conventionally treated plot. So this is in one of the onion trials where we tried the food spray. You can see higher number of pests per meter in the neem treated and in the food spray treated as well. You know, one of the things that really attracted smallholder farmers, especially to intending to going to pesticide use, is their knockdown effect. So this is the kind of result that we got. So this one is the natural enemies per meter for the food spray treatment we got. You have the green line where you have more natural enemies, the black line with neem treated, and then the red line where you have a lower number of natural enemies in the conventional or insecticide treated plot. So this is the yield we got from the trials, the onion yield. You have a little bit lower yield in the food spray treated compared to the conventionally treated plots, but the final revenue was higher in the food spray as compared, because farmers, the pesticides, they are expensive, so production was higher in the conventionally treated plots compared to the food spray, because the food spray is made from maize and it's easier, the farmers can make it at home as compared to the conventional or insecticide used treated. So the net income was higher for the food spray treated plots. So from 2019 to 2024, as we got good results even for vegetables, we started training farmers using the same methodologies that we used for cotton farmers. Same farmer field school, all the designs, setting up, manipulating the habitat, as Stephanie said earlier. We had to put refugee crops and so on. So we've trained farmers using same methodology, farmer field school, and we have reached more than 1,500 vegetable grower farmers, now fully implementing the food spray method. So in 2029, we conducted surveys, especially for farmers, whether they are really making economic gains, impacts or not, using the food after implementing or adopting the food spray method. So 92% of the farmers say they have increased yield, because it's generally an integrated crop management as part of the food spray method. 100 farmers reported good or medium quality. The quality is also part of the management. 83% reported similar or decreased production cost under IPM. So that is where the farmers gain. Leave alone the externalities like health impacts, environmental impacts, soil, toxicity or pollution to water bodies. So they were able to save money from pesticide, from buying expensive pesticides. 69 farmers reported increased net revenue, because that's where they save money as well. So as Stephanie said earlier, 20% of the farmers reported pesticide poisoning at baseline, and after in 2021 we've done the same survey, and poisoning reduced to 5.5%. And this poisoning was not from the IPM managed plot. It was from a different, but so this is the spray frequency comparison between baseline and endline. When we started the project, we asked farmers how many sprays do they do per season. It's not per year, it's per season, because they can do 2 seasons per year for vegetables, because onion takes 4 to 5 months So they do 2 seasons per year, and this is for a spray frequency for 1 year. So tomato at baseline they were spraying 37 times. In the line it was 5. So they could reduce the spray frequency down to 5 from 37. So they were just spraying every other day. For onion, the average spray frequency was 18, and in the line it was 4. So they were able to reduce the spray frequency by 77%. And on the other hand, they also reduced HHPs, highly hazardous pesticides, because we have a list of highly hazardous pesticides, 50 to 55% in product use, and spray frequency was reduced by 70 to 80%. So having said that, what were the challenges, the main challenge? It's not an easy journey from trialing the food spray method in different agroecological zones, different landscapes, and then showing the farmers that it works, convincing the government officials so that they can support the extension work as well. So the main challenge were, when we say the food spray, it's not something that kills insects. It's something that brings in the good insects, the good bugs into the sprayed cotton field or the vegetable fields. So that needs farmers to have skill of identifying the insects, to know which insects are bad, which insects are good, because the general understanding of insects by farmers is, except honeybees, any other creature, any other flying creature is bad. So whatever insect they see in the cotton field is a pest. So they tend to spray. So that challenge of training farmers to develop their skill in identifying and knowing, they don't know what a ladybird is. So they spray. So they have to know which insects are good, which insects are bad. They need to learn their life cycle, so that which stage of the insect feeds on aphids, which stage of the insect feeds on sucking pest, which stage of the insect feeds on bollworm larvae. Those technical and skill-based trainings needs time. It could be 2 seasons, 2 years, 3, depending on the literacy level of the farmers. So that was the challenging part. It takes time because we have to train them season in, season out, and we have to sit down with them in the farm, showing them. We have to develop manuals so that they can use training and identification tools so that they can use when they go out to the field. So this was the challenge. It takes time. This was the challenging part. And the other challenge was input production. As I said, food spray is prepared at home. So they do the maize kernel grinding manual. So that was a bit of a challenge because farmers they are used to using packed pesticide bottles from the shop, from the pesticide shops, and then they mix and spray. And then the moment we bring in the food spray method, which they can prepare at home, they say we want packed products, not something that we can grind at home. So that is something which really we faced as a challenge. So we had to set up some sort of groups or women groups used so that they can prepare the food spray and sell to the farmers. That's the one option. And the other is, if the farmers are convinced enough, especially from their background of pesticide exposure, poisoning, their children committing suicide from drinking pesticide from their houses. So if they are convinced, then producing food spray was not really a challenge. But we had to set up groups, women groups, and then use some grinding machines so that preparation of food spray won't be a challenge anymore. The other is adapting the method to new areas. It takes time. As I said, we brought the food spray method from a cotton production area to a vegetable production area, a different agroecology, different culture, different community. So it takes time because we have to start from the scratch. It's not what we did for the cotton project was completely different, and we have to start from the scratch, so that the farmers, the agriculture office people in there we need to start everything from the scratch, and that's something which needs resources and time as well. That was some of the challenge. So the other thing is the food spray initially was in Benin, and I told you the stories which happened in Ethiopia, and now it's being trialed all over the world. I would say in India, around 6,000 demo plots are set up in 2014, and demonstrations and trials are going on. In Uganda, farmers also trialed it in 2019, and about 28% yield increment was obtained from the maize base, and 65% yield increment from using the brewer's yeast based food spray. It's also being trialed for fall armyworm pest management in Vietnam. So, all these trials all over the world are really good moves to adopt, to help smallholder farmers adopt the food spray method all over the world. Yeah, finally, I really want to acknowledge trade, which already Stephanie acknowledged, and IDH. It's a Dutch Sustainable Trade Initiative, Jaje Charitable Trust, which supported the food spray trials, extension work, trainings, and so on, and the Darwin Project, which supported us financially when we did all this project work, extension work with smallholder farmers. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was extremely interesting. We have a few people moving, but I think we'll start with some questions. I have a question about how long does it take? Just the difference between not having to spray 37 times compared to making the spray at home. Is there any analysis of how much time difference there is in terms of the farmer time in doing that? For making the spray, because then they don't have to, they're not having to spray. I guess they're having to monitor, which is a time outlay, but they're not having to spray 37 times. I thought it was quite impressive.
Yeah, the food spray preparation takes, especially if it is a maize-based food spray, it takes 3 to 4 days. Mm-hmm. But the farmers, they can prepare it in advance. If your season is going to start in a month's time, you can prepare it in advance, put it at home, make it ready, and then you can take and spray. It's a matter of planning.
Yeah. And by 3 to 4 days, you mean you have to do something over a 4-day period, so it doesn't actually take full 4 days to actually make it, does it? No.
The 4 days period is when you start from the maize seeds.
Yes.
Because the final product that we need to apply or to spray is the fermented product.
Yeah. So it's to
cultivate. Yeah. You can prepare, you can crush the maize kernels, dry them properly, and store it. So when you want to spray, you can ferment it for, I would say, 24 hours in advance, filter, and then spray. That's what the smallholder farmers do. So it can be ready in 2 days if you prepare the food spray input in advance.
So it's the fermentation that's taking the time, but it's not. Yeah, that's. Amazing results, really. Stefan, did you want something about some of the challenges you see? I'm sure you've all got questions about this, applying this here or in Europe.
Well, I don't think the maize-based option is probably going to be a goer here, but brewer's yeast, it's a waste product. Breweries get rid of it. So basically, it's much simpler to use. You're basically diluting it down and then filtering. Yeah. Filtering carefully. Yeah. Both these products can end up, if you're not careful, blocking your nozzle. So there's good hygiene, washing down your spray equipment immediately after use. Obviously, in Australia, Robert had a few farmers who were collaborating with his field trials, and they were he was working with them.
And this
to
was
actually
vegetables? Was it vegetable
cotton?
Cotton.
Cotton.
Okay.
So he was working with his kind of homemade preparations there. How many farmers, well, I mean, Australian cotton farmers have huge acreages, but I mean, I think it's possible for a small-scale vegetable outlet to do that here.
And you've got more space for the refuge crop around. With a huge cotton field, I imagine that's quite hard.
Yes, well, they had to put quite a lot of alfalfa strips to reduce the distance that natural enemies get into the crop. I mean, if there was interest here, some small field trials, and then maybe think about how it could be made into a possibly some sort of commercial formulation. I guess Robert still has all the details of that. He's got his recipes and everything.
And you said the recipe is on your website?
For the maize and the, yes, we've got a training manual that explains a bit of the science behind it, how you use it, some of the things you might want to consider, how to run some fairly simple trials, how you might want to analyse them.
Right.
And we've got two science papers published, one from the Benin trial data, one from the Ethiopian cotton, and we've got one going through external review on the vegetable results.
Okay, great. Now, has anybody got any questions? If we have any questions online, so we're live. So if anybody watching wants to ask questions, do feel free. Please send in any questions. We've got gentleman here. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering whether if you apply the food spray, whether it actually has an effect of increasing any fungal disease. You know, a bit like how sort of you get like sooty moulds growing on where aphids have been sucking out the sap.
Particularly with the sugar, I guess that might have...
That's what I was just wondering, yeah.
I think it's a small amount of sugar, isn't it? But do either of you want to say about fungal growth or other issues?
Yeah, that's a good question. Obviously in the cotton, you're generally in quite a dry environment and it's not
fungal.
Rainy at that time of year, so I don't think it's ever been an issue there. But what about when you've been applying it in rainy season in vegetables? Have you had any issue with getting fungal growth on the crop foliage when you spray it?
No. One, because of the weather, and the other is it's even better especially for tomato. It's better because it coats the top part of the leaf, and then it prevents fungal disease spreading as well, rather than promoting. So it doesn't really promote fungal.
So it's almost antifungal, as well as
I would say, because for the vegetables there are other methods that we also integrate with the food spray for disease prevention. So food spray, because it dries the areas where we use the food spray is more of a tropical and Rift Valley area where the temperature is high and the moisture dries also. Only the food spray part stays there, coating the top part of the leaf. So we haven't faced that problem, and
But I think you can't just transfer this to any other. You've got to see what works and how you might want to tweak the recipe and the application to your own situation, I think.
No, clearly. Any other questions? There's a lady down here at the end. Two ladies. One first and then the other.
The strips of alfalfa that are needed to make this a success, have you learned of any benefits the farmers are finding any unexpected benefits, like using the alfalfa for feeding small animals, and how long do the strips last as well?
Go on,
there are multi benefits that we didn't mention here. For example, in the the vegetable grower farmers, they use it for animal feed. They also sell the seeds. Seeds are expensive. And now the agriculture office, the district and village level agriculture office is collecting seeds so that they can sell to the other farmers. They are expensive. Mainly they are using them as animal feed, especially for farmers who has dairy. They use them for animal feed. So multi-purpose are there for the alfalfa strips. So they last longer as well. They slash them. They don't uproot and completely destroy them. So they slash them and bring out new tillers. So they keep them there for a season or two, a year or two. Yeah.
And we're going to, through the new schemes in England at least, we'll have payments for flower strips. So I guess, just thinking in future possible use, you'll have an additional way to get supported in producing those refuges and habitats in England anyway. Lady in the front.
It's, in a way, it's not really a question, but I was just so struck by the feeling of sort of optimism.
Yeah.
And particularly from Ethiopia.
Can you put your throat close to your phone?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, okay.
Particularly from Ethiopia, it was just lovely to hear about the spread of, it's giving autonomy back to people who already know how to do things and going to the children as well. I think this is amazing.
I agree.
Really, you could, do you feel, is everybody much happier as well as healthier, and it feels happier?
That's a very good point. What are the cultural and emotional impacts of this?
Because it's very infectious happiness, isn't it?
Any comment on?
Yeah.
You mean the...
Yeah, that farmers' sort of mental health, and there's also the social element by working together in those groupings and doing the monitoring.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things we need to, I would say, study in the future, in the coming few years, because we only focus on the crop production side, like cultivation and so on. That cohesion between farmers, bringing them together every week so that they can sit together, chat together. It's not only insects, soil moisture, soil fertility, composting and so on. They also talk other social issues as well. So I would say there is a lot to be studied, especially when they interact, it's full season. It happens from land preparation to harvesting and post-harvesting. There is a time that they can, at the end of the season, they even sit together. We call it end of season communication, discussion. So that creates kind of social cohesion between farmers as well. So it's beyond crop production, I would say.
Right. Is anybody from Innovate Farmers here? Oh, sorry. I was just going to ask, but we have a question over there. Yeah. Just wanted to, because Innovate Farmers do farmer-led research in England, and it'd be interesting to ask them to see if they're interested in trialing this.
Thank you very much. My name is Meshak Sikuku from Ripple Effect, and thank you very much for the good presentation, my brother from Ethiopia. We do very similar activities like what you are doing, and I'm glad that you highlighted the challenge of smallholder farmers adopting this, especially when it comes to formulating and preparing, and they think this is the barriers and they don't have time for that. But even as we have been thinking about it, I just want to ask whether you have thought about it or not. Do you think that it will be much more easier and much more efficient to develop partnerships with the private sector who can then focus on commercialization, manufacturing, preparing this, so that farmers can get ready products which they can use rather than engaging in, preparation? Because when the planting season comes or when the pests, attack the field, what farmers want is go to the shelf, get the product, come and act, against the pests, but not to go start preparing and so on in their pests. So have you thought around this, and what are your thoughts about partnership with the private sector so that we have the private sector focusing on value addition of these products, packaging them, improving the shelf life and putting them on the shelf so that farmers can get it ready and use it? Thank you.
Thank you. Another option, of course, would be farmers cooperating together to produce the product as a product of a group of farmers, which is another option. But any work with the private sector about developing them? Might not be something you've gone down that route because it has particular implications, as we know.
There were few, I would say, one private sector which approached us and wanting to process the food spray, especially the yeast, the brewer's yeast-based spray, prepare it and sell it to the farmers. That could be one option, but for me, if I am able to prepare my own medicine, why would I expect someone else to come and prepare it for me? So it's a matter of training the farmers, providing the skills, so that they can come in groups and prepare it and sell it, which we are working with a group of cooperatives, women, so that they can prepare the food spray and provide to the farmers, or they can make it at home themselves. They can prepare in advance. It's a matter of planning. They can plan, prepare, crush the maize kernels, store it in a dry place, and mix it, ferment it whenever needed, and spray. So if we want it to expand to other like commercial farmers, semi-commercial farmers, and going to the market, that could be one option. We could try approaching the private sector that they can engage in the food spray production, but currently what we're doing is capacitating the farmers so that they can come either in groups, form their own business model so that they can prepare the food spray and do that marketing around there, rather than bringing the private sector from somewhere else. Anytime the private sector is not happy, he could stop producing the food spray, and that will go back to zero. So if they have the skill, if they have the capacity at home, that could be one way of even giving it to their children, their grandchildren as well. That's the way that we're approaching. But private sector could be one way also to be considered in the future, I would say.
Steph, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, it very much depends which bit of the private sector. I mean, there is a growing part of companies, small companies, some even medium, that are working with hand in hand with the organic sector in different countries. I think that would be a possibility. But Atalo, you were telling me this week there's a nice example of public sector support in Zuwai area, where the vegetable project is, where some of the trained farmers have gone as a group to the local Department of Agriculture and said, can you help us get this waste brewer's yeast, because it's quite a long way away from where they live. Transport is a bit tricky, the political situation is a bit tricky, and so the local government said, yes, we're now going to help you do that. So, I mean, what better endorsement can you have? And so that's another option as well, which buys them in and starts mainstreaming the approach within the public sector.
And I guess that the issue of food sovereignty and farmers being in control of the process and the costs and everything. So one principle which is probably pretty strong in Oxford Real Farming Conference anyway, thinking about how to maintain that sovereignty and farmer control. But it's not, it's not either or. But
if I would add one more thing here, going back to the conventional production system, there are times in this smallholder village, if, for example, pesticide retailers don't want to bring pesticide, if they want to increase the pesticide price, they say there are no pesticides in the market, meaning there will be no pesticides in that specific village. And then after a week or two, they will bring with prices increased. So because they are in control, they are the ones who are making decisions, especially in the price of pesticides. If we give that power to the private sector, while we can provide the skills to the farmers so that they can make their own food spray, their own neem extracts, I think that will be a bit of a challenge in getting access of the food spray and the other inputs in the long run.
Okay. Another question at the back there?
Hi, yes, thanks for a really promising presentation, fascinating stuff. I think you mentioned in one of your slides that you had like government support or government engagement around some of this, and I think you just also mentioned Department of Agriculture. I'm wondering, are we to presume that is agriculture, or is there broader support from like Ministry of Health, for instance? And would that further galvanise, accelerate things, knowing what we know about the health impacts of pesticides, especially on across the life course?
Really good question.
Exposure.
Really good question. Yeah, it should be cross-departmental support for this.
Yeah. So there was a recent study from WHO that about 46% of previously used to be kind of disease non-communicable. Previously, Ethiopia was mainly affected by communicable disease like bacteria, cholera, and things like that. Now, WHO report says 46% of the disease, the illness in Ethiopia is non-communicable, mainly heart failure, kidney failure. So these things are related to the food we eat, mainly with chemicals. Pesticide poisoning is rampant; it's everywhere. So we're working with the Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Health, and the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Environment, previously they had a poison center in the capital, in Addis. And that poison center, they only have a call center where they can receive calls from anywhere in the country and to provide kind of first aid information when people are poisoned with pesticides. And now they started projects in where we are implementing the food spray project. They started implementing projects with farmers, teaching them to reduce pesticide use, teaching them all the crop management practices rather than completely relying on pesticides. So that's where the interaction with the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Environment is coming from, with the Ministry of Agriculture. We are also engaged in that as well.
Right. I did want to just say that you'll be available after this to talk to anybody who wants to talk about the product, the process, and any opportunities people might see for trying a formula here that could work for different crops. Really interested in looking at that. So if anyone who wants to talk to the speakers and other members of PAN who are in the room, that would be really welcome, either after this session or during the next 24 hours. Be really welcome. So as people are having to go to other sessions, I thought I'd just mention that before we went to the next question. It's really exciting, and as several people said, it was really good to see the positivity and solution. But there will be challenges in the UK. Obviously, very different climate, very different pest spread. I can imagine some people think, what about slugs? Does it work with slugs? But, there's real opportunities here. So farmers who want to... I've made up a new word, which is because I often feel the word innovate is used in a bit of a dodgy way sometimes. It's always chemical or high-tech and expensive. So I've come up with a new word, naturivation, which is natural innovation, which I think this is a good example of that. So if you want to get involved in looking at this, just testing, talking about it, and even trialling it on crops or fresh produce, that would be really exciting for PAN, wouldn't it? I think, and there are other people in the room that would be very keen to do that. So we do have another question. Yeah, we've got two at the front here. Gentleman in the front row.
So this food spray, food spray, are we applying it to the crop or to the habitat margin that you talked about?
So where do you apply the food spray? Is it on
the crop?
On the crop, on the leaves, crop. Isn't it? On the Not on the growing tomatoes or the onions are ground, but you wouldn't be spraying on the tomatoes directly. Yeah. So the tomatoes
directly on the crop.
Right.
Yeah.
You talked about not having a habitat margin, didn't you?
Yeah. The habitat margin part is especially if you see the onion crop and its morphology structure, it's not really convenient for natural enemies to stay there. So it's better to kind of put a strip of alfalfa or any other, it could be lab or any other crop that is convenient where the natural enemies can stay, go in the spread nearby onion, feed on insects and then come back. So it's mainly to make an attractive environment for natural enemies and increase the permeability of the crop, especially if it is a big one. It's always good to put a strip of alfalfa in between the onion and other crops.
And those strips can have other benefits as well, obviously pollinator habitats and refuges for other beneficial insects and invertebrates. So, and did you have a question?
Yeah, I was thinking, would this be something you could draw out to people with allotments and like individuals in the UK, and we could do practices with our communities and get them to not go to big farm shops where they buy this pesticides, herbicides, etc.
That's a brilliant point, because we have a lot of community gardens, market gardens, and community and abattoirs, allotments. That's the wrong thing. It's a really good point, because also they could be producing that. I mean, Stephanie, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd need to think about kind of the food safety legislation. I can see some. I mean, most of the stuff we're putting in it is food grade stuff that we could eat anyway.
It's like kimchi in a way, isn't it? You're producing kimchi of some sort to put on. Yeah. But that should pass if something like neonics still gets derogations. Yes. You should be able to use a spray that's come from brewer's yeast. And you can use brewer's yeast as a fertilizer, can't you? So it's used. I know my father-in-law used it a lot. He got the local beer company to give him brewer's grains to put in his for compost. So there might be a co-product with that. Is there a co-product, or could could you filter out the solid material? Is that then usable in any way?
Yeah.
Use it as a fertilizer.
It can be used as a fertilizer.
Multiple. Brilliant. Multifunctional stuff. That's fantastic. Any more questions or comments or offers? We'll be no, lady there, I see you there, and then the gentleman over there.
Sorry, we're hogging the questions in this corner. What would you suggest that we use instead of maize in the UK? So I can access brewer's yeast because I already get sterile hops from the local brewery for my compost heap. I can get the brewer's yeast. What would I mix it with?
What would you mix brewer's yeast with?
I think it's just diluted.
Yes.
No, it's one or the other. Basically, I think you're producing something that allows the bacteria to produce. Sorry, I'm completely speculating here. I don't know what it is. Having said kimchi, that's probably wrong, but you're producing something that is producing
the odor,
the olfactory things.
The predators into thinking there's prey there. So I think the brewer's yeast actually works better than maize. So if you've got access to that, it's simpler, diluting, filtering, and then putting on. You probably want to put a little bit of soap solution in just to help it stick.
Yeah, as a sticking agent, you can.
Yeah. So we can. If you look in our food manual online, you can see the precise instructions for what quantities you need for.
That's all on there. Yeah. So very good point. And we do, as you say, we do have a lot of brewer's yeast to use in the UK. And there's a question over here, gentleman over there. And then we probably have to wrap up. So 1 minute left. If anybody's got a burning question.
What is the specific effect of the spray on the crop and on the pests? How does it work specifically? Thank you.
So we were talking about how it works. It attracts the beneficial insects that they'll then eat, the aphids or the pest insects. Is that right? So it's an olfactory thing to bring the good things in onto the leaves and the crop. Is that right? Yeah.
So it doesn't have any adverse impacts on.
So it's not systemic. It doesn't get into the crop or any other things like that. Often is the case with pesticides. It's basically a smell, and hormones are such an important part of life, and we don't use them enough, do we? So this is a way of possibly, not hormones, but olfactory cues, very important. Can I ask ask, is anybody, I mean, not looking, you're not going to write your name down or anything, but does anybody say they would be interested in trialling something like this? We've got a few, that's good, great. I mean, please do look at that. Please do get in touch with Steph and the others at Pan UK for if you want to work with them. And if you know any groups of farmers or growers who might be interested, then do let them know. Be a food spray ambassador if you can, because this is obviously a really great opportunity to do something different, do something new that really would replace the chemicals that we've got too much of in the UK. We know we have. We know it's a big problem in our soil, on our plants, in our water. So a fantastic opportunity to try something new, which is very organic based and really interesting. But we haven't tried it in the UK yet, so your innovators, naturators, please do that. So thank you very much for coming. Oh, we've got one is it very quick question? I'm probably told off.
Just to say, for people who are interested in using it, either there's a very small scrap of paper at the back, you can put your email address on there, or drop us an email at the email that's up there.
Thank you, Astab. Sorry, I was just going. Thank you very much and can we have a round of applause for our speakers, please? Thank you. Did I miss anything?